You're listening to Change Your POV podcast, episode 44.
It's really easy to start a business. It's scary how easy it is to get approved to start a business. They approve you like you know what you're doing.
Right.
No freaking clue. No help at all. So, we're not even repairing welding equipment. I'm still working for American Welding and Gas. We started up a welding shop.
Welcome to Change Your POV podcast, helping you navigate transitions in your life, like entering and exiting college or the military, changing jobs or careers, and providing you with the coaching and mentorship needed to help you advance in your personal or professional life. Sometimes all you need is to change your point of view. Now, here's your host, Eddie Lazary.
Welcome, everyone, for yet another episode of Change Your POV podcast. I'm your host, Eddie Lazary, and today I'm sitting down with Brian Dunaway. Brian is a special person in my life because he is not only a fellow veteran, but he is actually related to me. He is my cousin. So my father and your mother are brother and sister.
Correct.
And and we've got quite a few years, not quite a few, but we got enough years between us where I didn't have a whole lot of opportunity to get to know you growing up, other than, meeting here and there from time to time at grandma's house or whatever. But yeah, I went off to the Army right out of high school, did 10 years. And so now here we are. We're both adults. We're married. We've got kids. We've done some time in the service. And now I'm just finally getting to know you a little bit. So this is as much for my benefit as it is for the listeners out there. So before I get into any further questions, why don't you tell me and the rest of the listeners out there a little bit about you and your military service and kind of what you got going on?
Well, I joined pretty much right out of high school, like a lot of guys do. Everybody, seemed most of our family served in one service or the other. A lot of sailors. So, I kind of followed suit on that one. Sounded good. Like a month after I graduated, off to boot camp. Did boot camp. Then I went to air crew school. Went through that fun training, and then I got sent to my squadron, and that was VFA 113, the Stingers, out of NAS Lemoore, California. I started off, I think I got E2 before I got there, but that was a while ago. So, and it doesn't really matter at that point either. So, worked on the flight line, servicing, doing inspections on the Hornets, and playing on the flight line, playing on the flight deck when we got deployed, and made my way up, up the ranks to E4, and I transferred out, and I became a personnel specialist, third class E4. Took over a billing department for three Navy hospitals, and that's where I ended my about 5.5 years right there, and got out, decided to move back up to Montana.
So before we get into a little bit of that story, I want to go back and talk a little bit more Navy, because I talk to a lot of Marines and a lot of Army.
Yep.
I don't know a lot of Navy guys, nor do I speak to many of them. You're right. Most of the military service in our family all came out of the Navy. So our grandfather was in the Navy and our uncle was in the Navy. And I decided to break ranks and go Army for whatever reason. But so talk to me a little bit about, so how does the Navy work? So obviously you got boot camp, and how long does that last for Navy
months.
Guys? Okay, that's pretty normal.
Yep.
Now, do you do boot camp with all Navy, or do you have Marines in there as well?
It's all Navy. We go to boot camp in Great Lakes over by Chicago.
Okay.
There used to be 2 boot camps, one down in San Diego, one up in the Great Lakes region. They closed San Diego, and that's mainly, your SEAL training and advanced training down there. So they shoved everybody in Great Lakes, and they've been, retooling it quite a bit. I know they were building a lot more barracks when I was there, so there's going to be a lot nicer when after I left.
Well, I mean, lucky you. I mean, the Great Lakes it's much nicer and warmer than San Diego, so I'm sure the water was much warmer as well.
It was. It was
being
very
facetious.
humid.
Was it really?
Oh yeah, it was kind of surprising how humid it was there. Even after boot camp, I went down to Florida for my my aircrew school, and yeah, it was a little bit more humid, but not by much.
Wow, I would have never thought that.
I know.
So, I mean, typically your average sailor isn't, trucking around a weapon out on sea, right? I wouldn't imagine you guys, as part of your job, aren't lugging around, M4s and 9mm. I wouldn't guess. So when you do basic, what type of training is involved with that? I mean, are you doing a lot of weapons training, or is it more like swimming? Like, what's the focus of the basic or the boot camp?
We do a little bit of weapons quals, get familiar with the 9mm, but that's about it. If we need to be familiar with anything more, then we'll learn that when we move out of basic, or we can take the initiative to learn it ourselves if we don't have that opportunity given to us. But boot camp mainly focuses on your tradition. So, Navy and Army have been around long time, longer than everybody else for the U.S. So, they make sure that, our heritage is well ingrained into us. How to store things when we're out at sea, how we're keeping our racks, how we're, folding things, make sure that we know how to live correctly on the ship. And then, of course, physical fitness, that's a big one. And how to maneuver around ships. We have a little training ship that doesn't go anywhere. It's actually on land, but how to board a ship, how to leave a ship, how to maneuver around a ship where you don't stand.
Where you don't stand, and how not to crack your head on everything.
Yeah, you still do.
Yeah, it's there's down in Massachusetts, up in the Northeast where I live. There's this battleship. It's like a floating museum.
Mm-hmm.
It's down in it's called Battleship Cove, and they've got this battleship. I'm not sure what class. Like I said, I'm very Navy dumb when it comes to anything Navy. But it's a battleship, and they've got I think it's like a captured Russian submarine and another vessel. But anyway, so you go down there, you pay your ticket, and you get in basically all day, and you can spend all day just walking around this ship. And oh my God, it's like deck after deck after deck. It could very easily, and this is relatively small compared to what they have today, and you can easily just kind of get turned around and get lost in places like that. But I just distinctly remember very steep stairs, and I was cracking my head on everything everywhere I turned.
Yep. One thing that you learned how to do was read bulkheads. You probably saw the numbers above where you're cracking your head.
Yeah.
That was telling you, how far in you were, what deck you were on, whether you were on the port side or starboard side, all that.
Oh, so it's like a map. If you knew how to read it, then you basically know exactly where you were, huh?
Exactly.
That's crazy. And there was I don't know how many decks down, but there was a sign that basically said that where we were standing, we were actually below the water level at the point we were standing. So it was just amazing to think and to see and to imagine, being out to sea and, having, I don't know how many thousands of sailors on ship and trying to maneuver around and get by everybody. And I bet you're right. I mean, it's very close quarters, and you really have to know how to live in confined, areas and spaces and get along with people. I would imagine it's a little bit different than your college roommates where, you might, fuss a little bit with one another, but you can always go to class or go downtown or go somewhere and get away from them or from people. But you're out to sea on a ship. I can't imagine there's a whole lot of places you can go and not a whole lot of things you can do, huh?
Yeah. Where you have your berthing, that's kind of everybody's there. everybody in your squadron for the most part, or everybody in your shop if you don't have a big enough berthing. If you're lucky, you get stuck with, a small berthing where, you only have, 15, 20 guys in there that you work with and that you know pretty well. But you got a little lounge in there, but you can't really get away from anybody. You can go up to the galley, sit and talk and, have some juice or water or whatever. And, if you just need to have a break from people. The weight rooms are always popular. Don't get to get away from too many people usually on those, but good way to, take some energy out of you and stop from knocking somebody's head off.
Yeah. So you said Hornets. Those are aircraft, yes?
Yep.
What type of aircraft are they?
The one that I worked on specifically was called the FA-18 Charlie.
Okay.
It's a single-seat strike fighter jet. It was brought in around the early 80s. They're phasing them out right now. There won't be a regular Hornet left in the U.S. Navy. They might use them for training, less expensive to destroy a Hornet than a Super Hornet.
Yeah, so the Blue Angels, right, is that the aircraft they fly?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they just fly regular Hornets.
Got it. Now, what's the difference between the C class, or the C indicator on the end? What does that mean? Is that carrier?
Nope. Alpha and Bravo were the first models.
Okay.
Then you had the Charlie Deltas, and Charlies are single-seaters, Deltas are dual-seaters, kind of like, Top Gun.
Okay, yep.
Your guy in the back.
Yep. Yeah, Goose, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Now, is that what they were flying in the movie?
No, they were flying Tomcats.
The 16s?
14s.
Oh, man, I told you, man. I'm Navy dumb, bro. Navy dumb, man. All the way around. So, like I said, I talked a lot of Army and Marine Corps, and of course, if you listen to my show, you'll know that Bennett is, he identifies as a Marine, and even though he gave that up and became a soldier in the Army, but he says that the Marine Corps is the men's department of the Navy. So describe from a Navy's perspective, what's it like? Have you been out to sea with Marines on board?
Very few. They don't go out to sea very much on the full carriers. Every once in a while, you get a few that are training, pilots mainly. But Marines, they usually stick closer to ground-based units or are smaller assault craft.
Okay.
They're more on helicopters and landing craft stuff. Things like that.
So you were in the Navy, around the same time I was in the Army. Definitely around the global war on terror area, right? Within the last 12 years or so. So describe for me, was that different? I mean, what were you doing? Without getting into anything that you can't disclose, I would imagine there's some things you can't discuss. But was there the op tempo different or missions different living in the environment that we were, through the last 12 years of essentially wartime?
I joined pretty much as we were starting the Iraq War. I flew out and I met my squadron when they were going, when we were patrolling the Persian Gulf. Flew out to the Lincoln, and, that's, later on in that cruise, we bombed Iraq, and that's when that whole thing started. So, flight ops were, for one, I was brand new. Never seen really a flight deck, never got really close to, the Hornets except for, the few that I saw land before I flew off. That's a whole nother world up there, and we were flying constantly. It was nonstop. I was up on the flight deck 12 hours a day, waiting for, birds to come back or launching them. And we'd get little breaks here and there, to go eat and sit down for a few minutes. But it was go, 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 go all the time.
So were you part of the launching crew, or were you reloading ammo as these things landed to top off and to fly back off? What was your specific job?
When I first started, I was a plane captain trainee. What a plane captain trainee does is all the grunt work for everybody up on the flight deck. We get up there and, we basically kind of do a quick oil change on it. Plug in some oil and make sure it's full. Check the hydraulic fluid, make sure that's full. Look for any leaks or anything bad. We'll jump in the when the aircraft is off, we'll jump in the intake duct and make sure that nothing actually went in the turbine and it's free of what we call FOD, foreign object damage. So
that sounds like a rather dangerous job, jumping into the intake of an FA-18. I actually saw a video, you've probably seen it, where this dude was walking across the flight deck, and I think he was standing a little too erect or whatever, and all of a sudden he just got his ass sucked into that air intake.
Oh yeah, into a prowler. He was checking the catapult to make sure everything was set up right, and he lifted his head just a little too far, and
man, he actually lived though. I don't know how in the hell he lived, but
he didn't have his cranial strapped in his helmet. He didn't have it strapped. We're supposed to have him strapped up there, but God's dumb luck, he didn't have it strapped, and it sucked it off, and it blew out the engine before he got there.
Oh my God! Wow. So did you see any crazy thing? Well, obviously you probably didn't see anybody get sucked into an air intake, but
nope.
Anything? So tell me a crazy. I'm sure you've had several, but give me a crazy sea story that you remember, you recall from your time in service.
This was my last cruise, and I was on the flight deck, and we were recovering aircraft. Now this wasn't my squadron; this was our sister squadron, and jets coming in, and it's just getting ready to land. It hits the deck. Hits the resting arm and the tail hook, sheared off, and the jet kept on going. Well, it slowed it down. Well, the pilot was like, "Oh hell, I'm gone." He just ejected and he was out.
Oh no! So he didn't have enough time to power back up and take off, and well, even if he did, he'd have no way to land it, right?
Exactly. I mean, we could have sent off another aircraft to refuel him.
Yeah.
And so he could, make land. But he kind of, I'd probably panic myself. But, hits his mark and he's still going. So he just, yanked that thing.
Yeah. So the aircraft just kept going off the end of the carrier then?
Just went into the water.
Wow. Just tax write-off there, ladies and gents. Thank you for paying your taxes.
Yeah. That's $13 million.
Yep. Oh, well, it would have just ended up in some city's airport as a museum object anyway at some point, right?
Exactly.
All right, cool. So you did, 5.5 years?
Yep.
So, again, I'm very dumb with Navy anything. So describe for me the enlisted rank structure again. So I get the E1, E2, E3. I get all that. What's the actual names of the ranks?
Well, E1, when you start off E1, you have different ranks depending on what you're going in. If you're, ship's company, you're a seaman. If you go aviation, you're an airman. If you go into damage control, like firefighting, things like that, you're a fireman.
Yeah, I don't know. Does the Navy have any type of an NCO rank at the E4 level, or is that strictly E5?
Yeah, once you hit E4, you're an NCO.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Got it.
Yeah. Once you hit E4, you're considered a petty officer.
Okay.
And that petty officer carries all the way up through your E8, which is your Master Chief Petty Officer. So once you hit E4, you just keep on rising in the ranks as an NCO.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
How long does it take to obtain rank, or what type of do you have evaluations, or we have in the Army we have what's called promotion boards.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a certain set of criteria that we have to meet in terms of points, and then we go to a board and we're actually interviewed by a panel of first sergeants and sergeant major, which is your E8s and your E9s. And that's how you're kind of progressed into and through the non-commissioned officer ranks. Does Navy have something equivalent to that?
We don't really do boards up until you go into from E6 to E7, from first class to chief, that's when things start getting, really political, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
But we take regular tests. To become E4, you have to take E4, E5, E6. You have to take tests. And your physical scores. All that kind of works into it. Any special warfare pins that you have, like air warfare, surface warfare, submarine warfare. If you have those are points towards getting promoted. And then you take a test, and that's a lot of your points right there. Problem is sometimes your billet, your specialty that you're in, it could be full. I mean, they could, only have one person advance from, say, if you wanted to become an E4 and only one person advanced and nobody got out. Well, everybody else that's taken that, there's only one person.
Right. Yeah.
So kind of sucks that way. It doesn't. You could score. When I became E4, I scored in the 99th percentile. There's like 3 people in the entire Navy that moved up.
Oh wow!
Well, for my specialty.
Yeah, so it's in the whole Navy. It's not necessarily like a billet on your ship then.
No, yeah, you compete against the entire Navy.
Yeah, okay. The Army's the same way. Yep. Wow. Yeah, and the further up you go, the fewer slots there are. Well, which makes sense. I mean, you're gonna have more E1s, E2s, than you're gonna have E8s, E9s. I mean, that's natural. It's a ladder. It's a pyramid, right?
Yep.
So that makes sense. All right. So you got out at what rank?
I was just an E4.
Okay. But yeah, you're an NCO.
Yep.
So what's life like as an NCO on ship versus just a regular Joe? In the Army, we call them Joes. I don't know. What do you call lower enlisted in the Navy?
Words I probably shouldn't say.
Okay. So the Marine Corps calls them boots. In the Army, we call them Joes. And in the Navy, it's something unmentionable. Got it.
Yeah, we're pretty loose with our terms. Really, there's no, I guess, real standard that we call. It's just whatever we feel like calling you at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the term cursing like a sailor comes from somewhere, right?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, God. Okay, cool. So let's move on. So what year did you get out?
2007. December 2007. Yep.
So you get out in 2007. You decide to move back to Montana because it is a great country up there.
Yep.
And you decide. So talk to me about your transition out of the Navy. I mean, were you prepared? Were you unprepared? Like, did it go as the way you thought it would? Is there something you would have done differently or known differently if you were to go back? I mean, I'm asking like 3,000 questions right now, but just to kind of get a sense for where I'm going with this is I'd like, obviously this podcast is going to go out and people are going to listen to it, and hopefully those that are in the Navy are listening to this, and perhaps they're still in, and something that you could that you do say on this cast might encourage them or motivate them to do something perhaps a little bit differently than they had planned on. That's really the ultimate goal of Change Your POV, is to get people to think things a little bit differently than they normally would have. Because I'll be honest with you, when I got out, I was completely unprepared, man. I seriously didn't even think about what I was going to do, how I was going to do it, where I was going to go, how I was going to get there. And it took a toll on me, man. I had, a wife and 2 kids, and it was very, very stressful. And if I were to go back and do things differently, I would have done things very, very differently. So I just want to get a sense from that perspective from the Navy side. What was your experience like?
Well, I knew I was getting out. Some guys don't have that setup. Some shit happens, right? So, but I knew I was getting out. I knew this is the end of my contract. I had already, I had everything signed. I had movers ready. I know where I'm going. I have a job lined up. I took some time off and I came back up to Montana, lined up a job. I thought I was damn prepared. Get up here. We figured we were going to stay with my parents for, a little while until things kind of just settled down, because we were moving during the holidays. Just starting a new job. So. We figured probably, maybe about a month, maybe 2 at the most. I get up to Montana. I can't get a hold of the guy that's supposed to start making me, get me to work. He won't answer his phone, won't call me back, nothing.
Mm.
So now I'm like, oh, hell no.
What was that line of work? What were you supposed to be doing?
I was supposed to be an equipment operator for rail car derailment cleanup.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
Well, I was like, okay, I get to play with big machines. Cool.
Right. Yeah.
So, and the wage that we discussed was, for entry level, I was like, all right, I can do this. It's a good wage.
Mm-hmm.
Can't get a hold of him. I spend probably about a month trying to get a hold of him. And finally, he calls me up, says, all right, meet at this gas station. We're going up to North Dakota. We got a derailment up there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to work. Cool. Find out on the way there that I'm getting paid like $10 an hour.
Oh no.
And I'm like, what? That's not what we agreed on,
Right.
And, things just went downhill. He's like, well, I don't need any equipment operators right now. I just need laborers, and that's what I'm paying. I'm paying laborers. And I'm like 3/4 of the way to North Dakota now.
Oh.
So
did you just knock out that job and then come back and be like, see you, dude?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you married at the time?
Yeah. Yeah. We were married. Our oldest was like 6 months old.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet you that was a fun conversation with the wife when you got back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like.
I called everybody up. I said, hey, this is the situation.
Yeah.
We're moving on. And, I kind of bounced around a little bit from, a couple jobs. Took a job as a collections agent for one of the hospitals here in town. Because, right before I got out, I was doing billing and collections for the Navy hospitals in our region. So,
yeah,
I had experience in doing it. I ran the department. I could do it.
So collections at a hospital, were you like cruising around like repoing people's like wheelchairs and stuff?
No, we're trying to.
Oh, like bill collector.
Kind of bill collector. We were trying to get, whether it was supposed to be the insurance company paying or, private party, trying to get somebody accountable to start paying.
Okay. And that wasn't fun.
It was never fun.
Okay.
Sorry that you had a heart attack. Fork it over.
Yeah. Right.
And, it wasn't really the job that got to me, but I ended up getting fired because I had applied for our manager's position. And because I was still within that probationary period, she fired me because she felt I was gunning for her position.
Oh, nice.
So,
Yeah, that was a nice little wake-up call to corporate America, huh?
Yeah, I can't believe I got fired for trying to get promoted.
Wow.
So,
yep, happens.
Yeah. She didn't last very long there anyways, but,
Yeah. After, too late for you, right? You sacrificed you. Yeah. So now what you got to do?
Well, I did some work as a mason, basically hauling brick and mortar for, building buildings and elevators and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Did that for a little bit. Then I saw a job opening for Verizon as a cell phone repair technician.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
I was like, let's go for it. I get hired. I have no experience with, hands-on electronics besides, I know how to push the damn buttons on my cell phone.
Right, yeah.
Do you know how to solder? Nope. I don't know anything about this crap. Somehow I get hired.
Yeah.
All right, you guys must be desperate because I am not qualified for this crap. I start working, the guy, the manager there starts teaching me how to solder. He brings me from, bigger objects to, the microprocessors that are on cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
So, we worked big from small, and eventually I was able to, remove and replace any chip that could be removed and replaced on a cell phone board. Mm-hmm. They're kind of small. So
yeah,
there's lots of tricks to the trade that he showed me and things to look for, and I caught on pretty well. He told me that there's no more advancement for me. I was getting paid as high as I could, unless he quit or got fired, and he was about 10 years older than I was at the time, and he wasn't planning on going anywhere.
Right.
So he's like, if I were you, I'd look other places to, advance yourself, because you picked up on this pretty quickly. Try to stay in the field, of electronic repair. And so I kind of start, poking and prodding around, seeing what's out there, checking the help wanted ads and stuff like that. Company called, Valley Welder Supply. They're advertising for a welder repair technician.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go for it. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but
yeah, never stopped you before, right?
Exactly. I know how a welder works. I guess. I mean, I know how to stick metal together.
Right. Yeah.
So I interview and I get the job, and my first day, the shop manager says, "You're not going to last."
No, nice. Words of encouragement.
Yeah, I was
on
like,
your first day.
I go from one manager that takes basically holds my hand, tells shows me the tricks of the trade, to going from a guy, "You're not going to last." I'll be surprised if you're here in 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so that kind of lit a fire under the ass, and I learned as much as I could, as fast as I could, and I became really good at repairing welding equipment. It didn't matter if it was wire or stick welders or TIG welders, plasma cutters. It didn't matter. I could sit down and I could, decipher this stuff pretty easily. Mm-hmm. Just some things click for people, and boy, oh boy, that clicked for me real fast. And he was surprised. He was happy, but surprised that I lasted as long as I did. Mm-hmm. I did that for a few years, and that's basically where I learned how to repair welding equipment. And that's where my love of repairing and diagnostics came from. Right, it was right there. Okay. Yep.
So that's when you decided, this is not only easy, but I'm really good at it, and I've got a passion to do this. Well, hey, I could do this on my own. And is that where D&D Welders was born?
Actually, no. D&D Welders was the brainchild of a couple failed attempts.
Okay. No, I love failed attempts. So let's talk about these failed attempts, and then let me know when your brother comes on scene here.
So I take over as the shop manager for Valley Welder Supply, and they grew into American Welding and Gas. And we got a new building and everything, and I take over as the shop manager. Me and the president of the company saw differently about how we should do things in the shop, and at that point I was working with a friend, guy that I grew up from junior high all the way till we're still friends now. We started working with as a company called DNA Customs. We had no idea how to run a business. We had we just Googled how to start a business.
Yeah.
Oh, file with the IRS. All right. File with the state. Cool. It's really easy to start a business. It's scary how easy it is to get approved to start a business.
Yeah.
They approve you like you know what you're doing.
Right.
No freaking clue. No help at all. So, we're not even repairing welding equipment. I'm still working for American Welding and Gas. We started up a welding shop. We're chasing the oil rigs because the oil boom's just kicking it here.
Sure. Yeah.
We're going to Wyoming, North Dakota, back and forth, as fast as we can. Making good money, but not knowing how to manage it.
Right. Okay. Been there. Yep.
You got shop expenses. You have paychecks. Who needs those?
Right. Yeah.
Cost of fuel, insurance, business insurance. Holy crap. We had to have like a $3 million policy. Mm-hmm. That's expensive. That's like $1,500 a month. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There was so much more that, we got thrown at us that we had no idea how to deal with. And, we did the best we could, and finally it got the better of us. We lost a big contract because, again, corporate America. I got a buddy that owns this welding shop, so we're going to go with him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
One of those, huh?
Yeah. So, even though we did better work, better prices, and it didn't matter, we lost our big contract, and basically we sunk within like 30 days.
Mm.
Once we lost that contract, we were done. We didn't have any reserves. We didn't have long enough to, build back up another clientele or go after anybody else.
Right. How long were you in business at the time?
I think we lasted 8 months.
Okay. All right.
And during that 8 months, I quit American Welding and Gas to help manage the shop full time. Tried to manage it.
Right. Right.
Another experience. Don't let everybody have access to the bank account.
Oh. No way.
Yeah,
money disappeared, huh?
Oh yeah. We were supposed to do a custom build, and money disappeared. They put like $12,000 down.
Nuh-uh.
Goodbye.
Gone, huh?
Yep.
Oh.
And there was it took me a while to pay back some stuff, but I got paid back.
Yeah. So that was the first failed attempt, and you decided to go at it again, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think I love about veterans, right? We just get beat, and we're just like, fuck it, let's just keep going, man. I mean, whatever. We'll just get up and just keep getting beat, and it is what it is. But so many stories and veterans, veteran entrepreneurs that I talk to are very, very similar in that regard. Sometimes they just don't know when to quit, and sometimes it's not in their vocabulary. So yeah, so tell me the story about you getting up and doing this again.
Well, it was kind of we didn't really wait too long to go separate ways. My friend decided, okay, we're gonna go on the keep on welding, do mobile welding.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to get back into repairing welding equipment.
Right.
So, we're kind of feeding off of each other. When I know somebody that needs a welder, I give them a call, say, hey, here's a job, and vice versa. So, we're kind of going back and forth. And at this point, I don't even have a business name set up anymore. I'm just, shooting from the hip. I'm driving around in a little S10 that we'd built, and it can barely hold me in it, and let alone my tools and crap like that. So
yeah,
it was an interesting experience just to keep that dream alive. We were living in summer campers in the dead of winter in North Dakota, trying to stay warm through the night. Get up, go do some work, and back and forth. I mean, glutton for punishment is what we were, and kind of still are. I mean,
yeah.
Until the Bakken slowed down, we were going to North Dakota weekly, if not a couple times a week.
Wow. Doing primarily repair, not welding, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It was March 2004 or 2014, where my glutton for punishment, I was done. I was getting ready to sell everything I had off. I didn't want to own a damn wrench, a screwdriver, nothing. I was done.
Yeah.
And my brother comes to me, said, "Hey, I got a guy that wants to rebuild a welder." I'm like hell, I want to do that anymore. I've since 2011, I've got my butt whooped day in and day out trying to make $1.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, teach me to do it." All right. Well, so I kind of teach him, what to look for, basically how to wrench on these things.
Mm-hmm.
And he was liking it, and things were kind of working out good because he listened, which was nice. Usually,
that's weird for a brother, right?
I know, right?
Yeah. Okay.
We got we get this thing rebuilt, and we make some money. And he's like, well, I got another guy that wants to have a welder built. All right. So we start repairing. I have a tiny little shop. I have my garage in this tiny little shop that I can't back my truck into because it's the door is so small on it. Can't get anything in and out of it. And I mean, it's a horrible mess working on anything. But we started having regular clients, and we're turning product fairly quickly, as quickly as they pay us to turn it.
Sure. Yeah.
So we start, growing it, and I was like, well, hell, what are we going to call ourselves? We've been doing this for a couple of months now. What are we going to call ourselves? And that's really where D&D Welders came from, and we scratched out about 15 different names, and that's what we, it fits. It's easy to remember.
Yep.
Why fight it?
And you've been in business now together for how long?
Since officially July of 2014.
Okay.
Full, with D&D Welders. That's really when, everything officially came together and things kind of fell into line. We learned enough of what not to do to.
So you went back through the whole process of starting or registering with the state and getting insurance and all of that. So did you find it easier your second or third time around?
Yeah. Because we're not welding, our insurance is far less expensive. So that really reduced costs. I don't need as big a building as we did. I mean, our first building was over 4,000 square feet.
Oh, because you had to keep all the raw materials and everything that you were welding, right?
Yeah, we were fabricating all the piping systems for the oil rigs in there. So yeah, we had a large shop in there, but it'd run us dry some months, to keep the lights on, keep the heat on.
Mm-hmm.
Just the sheer size of it was way too much for us to handle, financially on a regular basis.
So if you had a time machine and you can go back and chat with your earlier self right before you got out of the Navy, what would you say to yourself and why?
Take it slow. I thought I had everything in place, when I first got out. I'd signed all my paperwork and everything. I was ready to go to work for a company. I think as far as that, I did right. I just, kind of bad luck, intervened and things happen. But as for jumping from job to job, man, that sucked.
Mm-hmm. But I will tell you though that of all the veterans that I have the opportunity of speaking with, that's actually not very uncommon. A lot of guys, gals included, get out of the military and all they know is what they've done in the service, and that's all they've been really trained to do for the most part. I mean, you may have multiple jobs within the service, but at the end of the day, it's still the service. And then when you get out, corporate America is a lot different. I mean, you may be doing the same exact type of thing, but the people that you're working for and the structure in which you're working at is very much different than that of the military service. And a lot of veterans find themselves going from one job to another, for various reasons, until you finally land on one that, like I think you described it well. It's, you finally found the sweet spot. You found your niche, the thing that, kind of clicks with you. And sometimes it takes the veteran, a few times, a few goes at bat to figure out what it is that clicks for them. And it did for me. I don't even know if I actually found what clicks for me. I found what clicks for me, and it's what I'm doing right now. It's Change Your POV. It's interviewing veterans, the podcast, helping and mentoring, although I'm not getting paid to do it. So right now, I'm, holding down a 9-to-5 job doing this on the side with the ultimate goal to be able to turn this into something that I could do full time. But that's my ultimate goal. So what are some things that you've been able to kind of take from the military or leverage from your military experience into your everyday life now, and in terms of your owning your own company?
You mentioned, veterans are a glutton for punishment. I mean, we got beat down so many times, financially. Just it seemed like it didn't matter what we did. We could do everything right, and just things would not work out. People, not paying their bills, not paying you. It didn't matter that we could have done everything right, and we probably still would have failed at that first attempt, just because we were naive.
Right.
We in the military, you're taught to trust those that you work with. The guy next to me, he's going to cover my ass if I don't see something. If I miss something, he's going to be there to back me up.
Right.
Here, in the real world, oops, we're just going to push you out of the way. and
right.
And they're just gonna run with it. So taking that punishment day in and day out, and never giving up. Yeah, there was a point where I was done, and my brother helped pick me up at that point, and he had just gotten out of. I think he'd just gotten out of the Army at that point too. So we just kind of got back up and went going again. And oh yeah, we're brothers. We have definitely gone toe to toe, and kicked each other out of the shop, and gotten pissing matches. And I think even last week we got in a pissing match. So, but we always come back because we keep that loyalty to each other, and not just as brothers, but as business partners. We have a common respect as veterans.
Yeah.
He's not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. And, we're going to, just keep on pushing through. And another thing that I think really helps is you have customers, in my line of work, we have customers that they can be very hard to deal with, very stubborn. I mean, it's their way or the highway, and they don't give a damn who you are. They don't care what you've done for anybody. They don't care how good you are. They don't give a damn because it's, their way or the highway. Being a veteran, being in those high stress situations, dealing with all walks of life, you learn how to read people a little better. You know how to talk them down, and you know how to stand up to them. I've definitely fired customers before, and I've had customers that I fired come back and apologize because, it took somebody, strong-willed enough to get it through their thick head that maybe you're not right all the time. And, veterans, we have a pretty thick head ourselves, so,
Yeah. Yeah. I like, when in doubt, fire your customers. It seems to work. I like it. I like it. I mean, but your customers are essentially welders, and welders are they're a breed unto themselves, right?
Yes.
They're very boy. I think I don't know a whole lot. I mean, not as many as you, but the ones that I do know, it's like my brother. He's an iron worker, and same thing with iron workers. They're very
proud.
They're a proud. They're a breed. They're a family. They're very a tight knit group of individuals. Very headstrong. Very I don't know how to explain it, but welders are very similar to that, and I can imagine dealing with that type of a customer can be challenging, to say the least. But the good news is, if you can manage the customer base of welders, you're set, man. You can pretty much handle any other customer base out there imaginable. So we're wrapping up here. So you kind of hit on it a little bit, but I wanted to touch on it as well. I know working with family is difficult as it is, but the fact that you're working with your brother, making a successful business with him, kudos to you, man. Not a lot of people can do that. Have you found that, the fact that you guys have military experience, even though, you were in the Navy, he was in the Army, you guys understand, discipline and respect and all those things that non-veterans or non-military just kind of don't get very easily. So have you been able to leverage that camaraderie aspect of being both with military background and as veterans into your business?
Towards each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes that that blood kind of gets a little mixed up in there. But we always come back, and it's kind of forgive and forget kind of thing. Yeah, we both know. We said something, did something we shouldn't have, and we moved past it. Everybody's done it, especially in the military. Things are said, things are done, and you just got to move past it. And that's kind of, I think, one of the best things that we have going for each other. Is we're able to just, yeah, we may be pissed off at each other one day, but the next day, or even that night, I can call them up and say, hey, did you, and just talk regular. We know it's business, and sometimes, business just eats you up, and we try not to take it outside the shop.
Yeah.
If I need to, call him up later that night and I need help with something, he won't hesitate to, leave his house and find me wherever I need help at. So
yeah, that's cool, man. All right, so at the end of my interviews, I like to ask all my guests a question. It's the same question I ask. Of course, I get different answers. But give us an example of a time when you thought something one way and something happened, an occurrence happened or a certain circumstance happened that forced you or caused you to think of that particular situation in a different way or from a different perspective. What was it, and what did you learn from that experience?
My first failed attempt at business, we could have pointed fingers at each other all day. They weren't getting the jobs done right or not fast enough. I wasn't managing it right. We failed together. They spent too much. I spent too much. And, it all kind of came down to we didn't communicate. We didn't trust each other enough. And instead of just blaming each other, and we could have some real bad blood between me and my friend right now. And, we don't. I can call him up right now and, bullshit with him on the phone. We don't do business with each other, full on. He's my customer, I'm his customer. Mm-hmm. And instead of just blaming each other, we looked at, how we all could have done better or could have done worse. And, we learned from that. It took a few years to, learn from that, but time is probably one of the best teachers.
Yeah, I like that answer, man. That's cool. Hey, thanks for coming on the show and sharing your story, and I'd love getting a chance to get to know you a little bit better. I look forward to getting your brother on here as well and getting his perspective and seeing if he's just as kind to you as you were to him. So we could have a little bit more of a I wouldn't say a better conversation, just one that I'd understand more if we're talking Army stuff. But no, it's good, man. I like to talk to different branches and learn a little bit more. My son's best friend actually joined the Navy right out of high school. He's a he works with submarines. What is that? A submariner? Yep. There you go, submariner. And he's stationed out in Washington State out there, and I forget the name of his boat. It's currently at dry dock right now, getting whatever submarines get in dry dock. But yep. So he's excited to eventually, at some point, getting it out to sea and all that good stuff. So he's doing all of his training and stuff. I think he's like on a different sub or something, doing his training and doing all his fireman qualifications and whatnot. But yeah, he's loving it. He's digging it, and it's good. That's good. He and I are pretty close too, and he calls me up and he starts telling me all these stories, but he's telling it from the perspective of a Navy, and he doesn't realize that not all branches are the same. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm nodding my head, and I'm like, yeah, it sounds cool. But I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying, dude. You're using words that I've never heard before, man. I have no idea. But yeah, that's cool, man. Thank you for your service, man. I appreciate everything you're doing. As a business owner or small business owner, I will say as a failed small business owner myself, I know exactly where you're coming from. So there's nothing like owning your own business, but then again, there's nothing like owning your own business, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a definitely two-sided coin for sure.
It is.
All right, man. Stay on the line. We're going to chat a little bit afterwards. But to close up this episode, do you listen to audiobooks at all whatsoever?
When I was on the boat, I would listen to audiobooks all the time. Is basically the only way to wind me down from getting up on the flight deck. Something to listen to, or I can just relax in my rack and eventually go to sleep.
Nice. All right, very good. So for all of you sailors out there that are on a ship with nothing to do, and you like to listen to audiobooks, then I've got something special for you. You can head on over to changeyourpov.com/free book, and you can download your free book from audible.com and get your 30-day free trial. Again, that's changeyourpov.com/free book for your 30-day free trial and your free book download. So go ahead and head over, check that out, and let me know what you're reading. I'd love to hear. All those sailors out there are going to go and download 50 Shades of Grey, right? All right, man.
Oh, dirty.
Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We have a lot more great content headed your way. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can email me at eddie@changeyourpov.com. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Change Your POV podcast with Eddie Lazary. Check out more content by going to changeyourpov.com. And remember, your ability and willingness to change your point of view will open doors of opportunity.